is related to. I'm just going to go ahead and give you a brief, well, it's not really a brief explanation, but I'm going to go ahead and give you an explanation of what we're doing here. Currently, Mississippi prohibits commercial hazardous waste underground injection wells. It allows companies to inject the same wastewater on their own property using that same technology. This forces smaller businesses to ship identical waste to Louisiana, Alabama, Arkansas, and Texas at a far greater cost. An example of one of these wells would be in Hancock County with Chemours, formerly DuPont. They legally operate their own underground injection well on site. Right now we have 1,243 Class II wells. They're oil and gas wastewater operating safely for decades statewide. We have 4 Class I non-hazardous wells, IDS in Emmet County, so over 400 million gallons injected safely since 2019. And then we have 4 Class I hazardous wells. It's at the Beeville, I guess it's Beeville Amendment exempt facility, captive. It's on site only. The word hazardous is a regulatory classification under federal law, not a measure of actual danger. So when you see hazardous, it always throws up red flags. When we're talking about hazardous, we're talking about gasoline from underground storage tanks leaks, and it's not hazardous because of a federal exemption. Same gasoline spill from a truck, hazardous waste, same chemical, same risk, different label. Oil and gas production wastewater. There's 268 Class II wells with this. It contains benzene, carcinogens, and toxic metals, not hazardous due to a federal exemption. Same material from a factory would be classified hazardous. Antifreeze, extremely toxic to humans and animals, not classified as hazardous waste under federal law. The purpose of this bill, and you can flip on the back of the handout I gave you, it shows a picture of what the well looks like. But the purpose of this bill is that it's costing companies throughout our state an astronomical amount of money to ship this waste out of state. Our geology is very, very good for wells and for injection sites. And that's the reason for the bill. And I'll be happy to entertain questions. Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. This bill would allow commercial entities to come in and drill these wells, and we receive waste from other states. Would that be permissible?
Under this, I mean, yeah, technically it would be permissible, but that wouldn't really make sense. If they're drilling in other states, they could use their own wells to inject their hazardous waste.
Well, it just seems to me that we become the dumping ground for other states' hazardous waste. I understand the gasoline and things of that nature that aren't terribly concerning, but would hazardous waste include toxic waste, nuclear waste as well, potentially?
That's a question. Mr. Baker, will you address that question from Senator Williams for me, please? He's recognized. If you ask him to stand at the podium. And if you would, when you just announce your name and who you represent for the record, please.
My name's Richard Harrell. I'm retired from DEQ after 25 years. I work for a regional engineering consulting firm in the area now. We represent clients from Florida to New Mexico, mainly industrial clients. But I think your question was around nuclear or radioactive waste. No, this would not be allowed. That's a totally separate regulated.
What would be the list of hazardous waste that would be permissibly dumped in this?
So again, what we're just trying to do is clean up some old legislation and a court case against Mississippi to allow for really liquid wastewater disposal. We're only targeting underground injection for some select industries that generate those type of waste that could be allowed under federal law. Typically, ones we're looking at would be like metal finishing waste, like phosphating operations. Jindal Tubular is close proximity to this, and they're having to ship their waste to Alabama and Texas now. Some others we'd be looking at would be some wastewaters. Again, this isn't certain things, but some wastewaters like ergon might generate here in wells. Right now, the one facility we have receives liquid waste from ergon that's got some exemptions, so they're allowed to take it. But there's some other waste streams that, like ergon, or some others might have that we'd be interested.
Current law would be interested in taking. Current law allows on-site disposal if the facility's big enough to do that now, correct?
Yes. So you've got 3 or 4 facilities that are already doing this.
The concern that I have with this, on my way up here, I had a constituent contact me, very, very concerned about it. And they said in the 1980s, legislation, in their opinion, of this nature was introduced. Knox City County is an adjacent county to mine. And that was going to be ground zero for a dump, if you will. And obviously that perception, nobody wants to live next to a dump. So it seems to me this is broader than the intent that I'm hearing is. Is that something we can maybe look at or wait? Because if we open this up where we can take waste from other states, it just seems like it's broader than it should be. If we're trying to help our local businesses and small businesses out and minimize the cost of them to do the dumping, that's one thing. But as I'm understanding this bill, it does not read that way.
So what I would say is that, would you propose that these wells only be used for Mississippi entities? Is that what you're proposing?
At the very least, I mean, haven't had really time to look into this deeply. I don't, if that's the intent of it and we don't see a harm there, but there again, it just feels, I mean, we're going to be the dumping ground, or we could potentially be the dumping ground of the Southeast. And I don't like that.
Well, I mean, what I would say is that there are these wells that exist in all the states around us already. So again, it wouldn't make much sense if they've already got a dumping ground in their state to pay the extra money that's going to cost to ship it into Mississippi. So that would be what I would rebuttal on that. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a business decision, and that was the reason for the bill.
Then I would offer that amendment. This would be strictly for Mississippi businesses.
Are there any other questions? Senator Fillingane?
This amendment?
No, on the bill.
No, I have a question on the amendment.
Okay. Any more questions on the bill? Senator Harkins?
I guess my question is are the neighboring states, is it the same material that's allowed? Or are we allowing different materials than other states are allowing?
The same or less, or same or more restrictive.
Same or more restrictive. So if it's the same or more restrictive, then, I mean, I'm to Senator Williams' kind of question. I think the concern would be is if it was more open and they were allowed to dump things that other states weren't taking. But if they're the same or less restrict or more restrictive, which means fewer items could come into our state, I don't know why anybody would pay more to transport it across state lines. Are there any type of shipping, I guess, shipping this type of material across state lines? Does it cost, are there fees from DEQ or MDOT for transporting those type of products in our state? Do you have to get special permits to transport that type of material into our state?
Are you looking at me, Chairman?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, right now, there's no fees associated with this. Now, this does not, and to answer the other senator's question, this does not remove the whole demonstrative need process, which is a totally separate process that has to be done. So, I mean, I don't think it opens the door for anything like was proposed in the 1990s. And I was at DEQ at that time. So I don't think you'll see anything like that. There's still a lot of pieces in play there. Exact legalities, I mean, we can discuss. I'm not an attorney, I'm an engineer, but I think, again, our intent and what we're trying to do is clean up just for the remove that UIC piece in this court case, around that circle of language that's mentioned in the bill.
So just to be clear, we're not allowing anything to be dumped in Mississippi that wouldn't be allowed to be dumped in the neighboring states.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Hobson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies for walking in a few minutes late, but are these existing well sites that they're pumping into, or is this for new?
There are existing well sites, but they're going to create more. And that was, if you look at the back of that handout, it shows the structure of what these wells look like. But there are existing wells in the Mississippi right now. And you can look at them right here. There's a list on the front page of the different classes and what you're able to put in them. The class 2 wells, they did it with oil and gas. And then you've got 4 class 1 hazardous wells that exist now.
So if I'm a company that's got a hazardous waste, would I contract with one of these class 1, for instance, the class 1 hazardous, would I contract with one of those 4 sites to put my material?
I believe, what is the capacity of those 4 hazardous sites? I believe, when I was looking at some of this information, some of them are pretty full.
Yeah, they're pretty full and they would still require a permit change because right now they're not commercial hazardous waste, they're captive ones. So even before you did that, you'd be looking at permitting action and some other actions by the Department of Environmental Quality.
By whom? I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Sorry?
By whom? You said
The
that,
Department of Environmental Quality.
so before you put any waste into these sites or any other site, you've got to get a permit from DEQ, correct?
Correct, absolutely.
And would they make the determination as to how full or how much capacity is in these hazardous, class 1 hazardous or non-hazardous sites? Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And what about the class 2 wells? There are 1,243 of those. Are those able to store the hazardous materials or not?
Well, they take hazardous materials, but hazardous waste. Again, it's kind of the nuance on the language, but they are not built to the same design standards, so they would not be able to be used for this.
So that doesn't apply to this at all?
No.
And no DEQ permitting this, you're not even concerned about those. That's just
No.
here for us to know how many.
Just to know that it's very similar materials that are already going downhill. It's just a different source generates that material for class 2 wells. So they've got different regulations.
Well, they've got federal exemption on those.
That's right. They've got a federal exemption to put this material down a class 2 well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Senator McCon?
And I probably should have done this to Mr. Baker, and ask him this outside, but you just mentioned there may be potential new wells, drilled for the purpose, with this legislation. In property law, generally, there's a severance of the mineral interest often in these situations. Will these individuals in these new well locations, will they be required to own the surface and the mineral interest there? Or are you gonna be able to just come up on our land where we've got something and maybe institute a new commercial well for input purposes? That's a concern I have, and I'm sure you understand, Mr. Baker, what my concerns are.
Historically, they're required for both. They're required to have the I would point out that when you're talking about wells, I know we're talking about wells in the plural, but know that the process for permitting that is currently in the law is not changing. We're not creating anything new. So you're talking about a 3 to 5 year permitting process, $750,000 to $1 million. Probably will be no more than 1 or 2 of these in the state of Mississippi where the geology permits. I currently represent a client called Injection Disposal Services that operates the only class 2, class 1 licensed well in the state down below Liberty, Mississippi. And as you can see by the diagram, it's 9,000 feet in the ground. But it's also important to understand the design of the well. The well is designed with negative pressure, so if anything happens, it goes in, if you can see the design there. And so we're not talking about pressure coming up, we're talking about flow going down. Highly regulated, monitored 24/7, whole 9 yards. We've since 2019, if we were able to get a permit and use this well, we've had no issues whatsoever, no write-ups, no calls, no losses, no anything, because the technology is proven. And we're talking about 9,000 feet, almost 2 miles in the ground.
And I have no doubt about your technology being proven. Of course, I'm looking at the potential impact in the surface area there. Would be able to transport it from another site within the state and put it into that well site if that were the case?
Really, and that's the goal, is to as much as possible, get these trucks localized. And there was a question about, well, they could come from anywhere. No, there's an economic component to this. Anything over 150, 175, 200 miles, economically speaking, there'd be no interest to come to Mississippi. If you're not that close, you would go somewhere else. And so there's not going to be this great influx. But we do have Mississippi companies that simply have to take advantage of opportunities outside the state because they don't exist here.
Thank you.
And this waste is being generated now as we speak.
Any other questions from the committee? Senator Williams for your amendment.
Again, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Appreciate the conversation. I'd like to offer an amendment that only Mississippi companies would be able to use these wells.
Committee's heard the amendment. All those, okay, question on the amendment. Senator Harkins.
Is it Mississippi companies or companies located in Mississippi? Is it?
Sorry. Companies located within the geographic boundaries of the state of Mississippi. Correct.
Senator Filligan, did you have a question on the amendment? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Senator Williams, on your amendment, you said a Mississippi entity. You're talking about only waste that is generated in Mississippi, or there are Mississippi entities that own sites in other places too? So I didn't know if your definition meant something beyond waste generated in the confines of the boundaries of Mississippi?
Very good question. To be clear, the intent of my amendment is only waste generated within companies that are located within the geographic bounds of the state of Mississippi, regardless of ownership. Thank you. Apologize for the vagueness.
Senator McMahon, you recognize?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Senator Williams, it's not for just companies located in Mississippi. You keep saying companies, you mean facilities located, because the company may not be located, the headquarters may not be inside the state, but they may have a facility inside the state that you need to utilize the storage facility.
Yes, sir, that is
So
correct.
the amendment would be for waste generated inside Mississippi that are generated by facilities located in Mississippi.
That's correct. If we want to be, to me, the clarity is we'll take our own garbage. We don't want to take anybody else's. If that's, I don't know how to exactly put that into words, but that's what I'm trying to say. And it might not be a facility. It might be something else. We might have an institution that generates it, a research institution that does that. So I would not want to preclude them from that. But I don't want Mississippi to be taking other people's garbage.
Any other questions on the amendment? All right, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed? All right, now I will entertain a motion.
Title sufficient do pass as amended.
Heard the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that bill will be reported. All right, next bill, House Bill 1069, the Mississippi Agricultural and Farm Wind Tower Protection Act 2026. We have a strike all to that bill. And what I did was I took the Senate language on the wind bill that I passed earlier and put it into this bill, which forms the study committee. It puts a 1-year moratorium on future wind towers until the study is complete, but also grandfathers in existing construction on wind towers. And I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Senator McMahon,
Title sufficient do pass, strike all.
you've heard the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That bill will be reported. All right. House Bill 1073, the Consumer Freedom of Choice, protect the purchase of farm equipment, vehicles, and lawn tools. We passed a Senate bill earlier this year. It's the same exact bill. Basically, we went to the municipalities and told them they couldn't ban gas appliances. Well, if you've been paying attention to what's been happening in Virginia, the governor there just put a ban on gas blowers. And we're just not going to do that here in Mississippi. We want all of our options available. And that's what this bill does. I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Seeing none.
Motion is title sufficient do pass.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? That bill will be reported. All right, House Bill 1558, Tishomingo Water District revised provisions related to compensation and reimbursement. All right, this does not involve any state money. What this does is it gives the ability for the I can't even pronounce that, Tishomingo Water Authority to raise the compensation on their board members. And that's what the bill does. Any questions? Seeing none,
Motion is title sufficient to pass.
motion is title sufficient to pass. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, that bill will be reported. House Bill 1563, municipal utilities revised composition of the commission. All right, this bill comes to me, if y'all will recall, the city of Canton went in front of the Public Service Commission and received a rate increase. Rather than implement it gradually, they implemented the full 25% upfront. And so I've received several different complaints from different people that live outside that 1 mile radius of Canton, but do receive the water services. They're wanting to add 2 members to that board to where they have representation. And that's what this bill does. And I know we have an amendment coming, but any questions on the bill? Senator Whaley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With this bill, I understand what the intent of it is, and I do appreciate the intent. I just don't think that it quite gets there. Dealing with the municipal utility services provided to customers outside of the city limits, you have a group of people who are being serviced but have absolutely no representation. This bill seeks to put 2 people on that board that live outside of that, outside of the municipal boundaries. That is not representation. That is just putting someone there to say that they are there. The idea of my amendment, and I'm open to discussing how to do it, but the way that I believe it should be done would be start at line 19 with the word "to," strike that from line 21 to municipality, let the language conform, slip over to line 64 and delete through line 85. And I believe that there should be language put in there that dictates that geographic boundaries be drawn and an election be held to select the representation of the utility board, much like what happens with an electric co-op. That seems to be a model that works very well. And if you're interested in giving representation to the people who live outside of the city limits who are receiving these utilities, I think that's really about the only way that you can go about it. So that would be my amendment.
You've heard the amendment. Questions on the amendment? Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Whaley, does this anticipate there are 7 commissioners on each of these boards? I don't know if there are some commissioner, maybe some districts that have fewer than 7.
The language in the bill, which I did not touch, says that it would be no less than 3 or no more than 7.
Because if you had 2 out of 3 that are outside the city limits, that wouldn't seem like it'd be a fair number for the people that lived in the city.
Well, I think that you could, and that's the reason why I said that you should draw the districts by population where you did have a fair representation. And that's my whole point to it. And I do agree with you that if it's 3 and you have 2 outside and 1 inside, it's not fair. And I think we should have equal representation.
Yeah, I mean, the intent of your amendment to get representation for those being served outside the city limits, I agree with. I'm just trying to make sure that if the law, I mean, if this is not written properly, you could have 10,000 people inside the city having 1 or 3 reps if you had a 5-member board, and then you had 500 people outside the city that had 2 people representing them, which it would be very unfair for the people that lived in the city that were getting the service too. I don't know what my response or if I had a amendment to your motion would be at this time, but I think we need to dig a little bit deeper on the representation issue.
Well, and that's the reason why I left it kind of open, with the intent of drawing the districts to conform to population. I think that's how you should do. That's how I would believe that you should do it. And I'm open to your suggestions. Obviously, if you drew them to population, you would have fair representation across the board, would you not?
Probably so, unless, you know, you had, I mean, you could leave out, again, if you had a 10,000 population in your city and you had 500 people outside the city that were getting it, you could be that if you drew it in thirds or drew it in fifths, you could have nobody from outside having representation because you'd have more people in the city that would control it, and the people that are outside the city would never really have a voice in that. So to help you out, I'd want to make sure there was some way to allow those that are outside the city limits who are getting the service would at least have some representation on the board. I don't have the answer right now, Mr. Chairman, but I do think before this gets to the floor, if it passes, that maybe there could be some language that may be acceptable for everybody, for those that agree that there ought to be some representation if you're outside the limits.
Well, maybe the answer would be just to strike the language that I said earlier, not insert anything, but insert a reverse repealer so that this goes to conference and we have more time to work on it going forward. That way I could be a little bit more clear with the intent of where I'm trying to go with the legislation. I would be open to that as well. If that would make the committee feel better.
What I would suggest is either wait on your amendment until we get to the floor, or we can put a reverse repealer in the bill and work on it that way. I'm open to either one.
I think we should strike the language, at least from line 64 through 85. That's the language that bothers me the most in this. If we could strike that and put a reverse repealer, that would be my amendment.
All right, you all have heard the amendment. Questions on the amendment?
I have a question.
Senator McMahon.
So, Senator Whaley, I'm sympathetic what you're trying to do. I want to be sure the committee understands what we're doing here. There are municipalities that own their own utilities, and a municipality is governed by a board of aldermen, 5-member board of aldermen. This bill recognizes that the board of aldermen may create a commission of 7 people. And so the commission will be represented by the board of aldermen, will elect 5, and 2 will be appointed by the county board of supervisors. So this doesn't do anything, though. What your amendment doesn't do anything to the utilities that are already owned by the municipality. As a matter of fact, it may keep them from forming these commissions.
And thinking about that is one reason why I've just said that we could remove the language from 64 through 85, insert a reverse repealer, and I could have some more time to work on this going forward where I could be very clear with my intent.
I'll support a reverse repealer, but it's actually, I think your amendment's actually detrimental to the legislation because the board of aldermen would not set up a commission knowing that
Well, the Board of Aldermen are not setting up a commission already, and that's
Right.
part of the
Some are.
problem. And I think that we should have language in there to make them form that commission.
So this legislation is encouraging them to form these commissions. That's the point of the
I think it still
legislation.
says may and it does not say shall.
Again, I'd like to support your amendment if you just do the reverse repealer, but that's,
My amendment is to strike the language from line 64 through 85 and insert a reverse repealer, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions from the committee? All right, y'all have heard the amendment. Let's vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Another motion?
tied to sufficient, I'm sorry.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? All right, that bill will be reported. All right, House Bill 1632, Community Public Wastewater System Infrastructure Sustainability Act. If you will recall, we passed 2 separate bills dealing with grading systems at the Department of Health on clean drinking water and then on sewer at MDEQ. I'm going to put a reverse repealer in this bill because there was some language that DEQ requested on the way that they will run their program. And I was not able to get it inserted in enough time. I plan on inserting it on the floor. But I will be happy to entertain any questions. Seeing none I need to offer the reverse repealer. All right. Any questions on the amendment? Seeing none for a motion. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. The what now? Yeah, let's vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Now a motion. You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? All right, that will be reported. All right, last bill on today's agenda is House Bill 1664, the Mississippi Video Service Act. I will tell you, there was some controversy early on this bill, and me and Chairman Powell in the House, we were able to get the Cable Association and MML in the room and negotiate through this bill. And the Cable Association took all of their amendments friendly, and MML is now on board. I'll go through a brief explanation of what this does. Mississippi received over $1 billion in federal funding for broadband deployment in rural areas. This legislation will help cable internet providers deploy faster in areas that do not have adequate broadband service. Cable companies are the only companies that pay a statewide video franchise fee to the locals, up to 5% of gross video revenue. This is in addition to any local permitting and right-of-way fees imposed by the cities and the counties. In many instances, delaying it and obtaining the local franchise have created significant delays in federal broadband projects, putting these projects at risk for completion by the federally mandated timelines. A statewide franchise agreement issued by the Secretary of State would expedite broadband deployment in the state to areas that need it the most. Mississippi and Alabama are the only southern states that do not have statewide franchise. Some states like Florida and Louisiana prohibit local municipalities and counties from any additional permitting fees, since a statewide franchise fee is already imposed on cable providers. The Cable Association has compromised with MML on this point, and local governing authorities can impose reasonable direct permitting costs on cable providers. And like I said, all the amendments proposed by MML were accepted. Nothing in this bill limits the local governing authorities' ability to maintain and administer the public rights of ways. Locals can still limit construction times, require permit for street cuts, et cetera. Cable companies are still required to adhere to all rules and regulations of a locality when operating in the right of way. Cable companies also have agreed to post a $1 million performance bond or negotiate a performance bond individually with the locality in which they serve. That's what this bill does. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, do we have a question? Go ahead, Senator McConnell.
What you're saying is this is taking away the local authority, the local municipality or local subdivision's ability to franchise, accept the franchise fees, and it's now going to a statewide franchise fee. Is that what?
Franchise fee, and it can be up to 5%. They're capping at 5%.
And where is that going to go?
That's for the whole state.
I know that's where, is it going to the general fund? Is it going to special funds? What's going to happen with those funds?
With what fund?
Those funds, you said 5% up to,
That stays with the municipality.
so you're saying now that it's going to a statewide one. Is there a fee for the statewide one?
No.
So it's free.
It just imposed statewide on all the different municipalities.
And then we're wiping out all the statewide, the municipality ones.
Right. Any other questions? Or a motion? We need to adopt the strike all first. Motion is we adopt the strike all. Those in favor? Opposed? All right, now we're back on the strike all. Motion is titled sufficient to pass, strike all. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be reported. I'll entertain another motion. All right.